Hey everybody, welcome to the Machine Shop Growth Podcast. My name is Mike Fritz. I'm your host of this amazing show that we get the chance to talk about the things we love in the machining industry. And if you don't know this about me and my co-host Kirk Phelps, we actually do this. We are not former machine shop owners. We are not future machine shop owners. We are current machine shop runners and owners. We make chips every day. We actually do this stuff. So when I bring you a topic like I'm going to talk about today, it's really important you listen because we've hit a lot of walls around this specific topic. And this is one of the easiest and most important ways to increase your top line revenue, which of course will impact the bottom line revenue. But if you don't know how this show works, again, our name is the Machine Shop Growth Podcast, but I do a show every 2 weeks on sales marketing, getting business, and my co-host Kirk Phelps, who's our operations manager and a master machinist, does the floor, the operations, how you actually make parts and get them out the door effectively, efficiently, and quickly on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, and the first and the third Tuesday of every month, you'll get a sales and marketing show. So if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so. And if you've been getting value, it really helps us if you could give us a great review so that we can continue to get this podcast to more people. Thank you all so much for being a part of us. We get messages all the time of people getting value out of the show. If you have questions you want evaluated on the show, answered on the show, please send them. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just Google Mike Fritz or LinkedIn Mike Fritz, and you'll find me. So thank you all again for joining. This week, we have a good one. We have a powerful episode this week talking about one of the three-legged stools of winning jobs, which is price. If you don't know our three-legged stool, it's price, quality, and time delivery. So if you have price, quality, and delivery time, that is our three-legged stool of quoting, which is really what's most important to customers. We actually believe there's a fourth leg, which is partnership and how that relationship runs those three legs, because a lot of times that relationship drives if you even are able to get the quote or not, which is why our name, American Precision Partners, that owns all of our shops, that's why we're named that, because that word partner is imperative to, it's in our DNA. It's how we operate. And I would encourage you, as you're growing your shop, think relationship, don't think transaction. This industry can get fairly transactional. And because we get POs, we deliver a part, we get paid. That seems transactional, but don't mistake the movement and the foundation under that process is the relationship. And so very rarely are OEMs connecting with shops like ours based on just a Google search. It happens, but a lot of times it's a referral of, a third-party vendor. The anodizer says, oh, there's a shop across town, you might want to use. That's this industry. It's a relationship-based industry. So when you go to quote, there's three things that often drive this quoting process, which is price, on-time delivery, and quality. Well, this week I want to talk a little bit about price. Price is an interesting character to this process because people win a lot on, they think they have to have the lowest priced to win. And I will tell you, price is determined by a couple things. Number one, is determined by the type of industry you're in. So if you are in a OEM race to the bottom industry, and not all OEMs are that way, but a lot of them are, you are fighting possibly overseas. You're fighting to the pennies on the dollar. Sometimes we actually were placed into a kind of a quote. I'll just call it it's a bidding war is all it is. They give you a price, and if you aren't at that price or below, you don't even get accepted into the bid. And so we went in, we bid, we did all the work. It was about $500,000 a year. They're going to give us $500,000 a year for 5 or 6 years. And after our margin, we're in single digits, 5-6% maybe. And if it's a highly automated process with zero people touching it, you may be able to make that work. But boy, that's a really hard margin to hit, right? We all know that. That's why our strategy for us is we don't compete heavily on price. Now, have we lost jobs because we're too expensive? Absolutely. Have we won jobs because we're the cheapest? Sure. But the truth is, price is a price is determined by, for our perspective, price is determined by us, not them. They need it for this price. That's fine. You need it for that price. But for us, in order for us to pay our people, grow the business, make a margin, so we're not working for free, we have to be here. Now, there's a couple levers that can make price go up or down. As we can do, we can do higher runs, we can hold rolling fronts, we can do things that help the customer, but you can't compete on price. So let me tell you, often what drives, rather than getting into the DNA of pricing on how pricing is determined, really what I want you to do is shift your mindset. Growth doesn't happen on price. In fact, I want you to think about this as an analogy. Your financials can't go up when your prices are going down, right? And I know that people are going to say, yeah, but if your bottom line's growing, that's what matters. And that's true. But often when you're a race to the bottom and you're trying to be the cheapest in order to get the bids, something in the system usually breaks. You may not have the people in order to get it done because you can't afford to make new hires. It's strapping your machines. Your machines are getting more use, which is great. We love spindles that are turning, but then they're getting more use at a lower margin than they have to be. And so now maintenance is more, and all these things come into play because we sought to race to the bottom. So I want to help you understand, like, price is a part of the equation for sure. But what I want to help you see is a lot of people lead with price, but they don't think about this. The number one reason price drives machine shops is because they don't have a niche and they possibly are choosing the wrong industry. When you don't have a niche and you are just simply, the lowest bidder. I'll be all things to all people. That's the fastest way to charge pennies on the dollar when you can be charging multiple dollars on the dollar, right? So this is the idea that if you think about a general practitioner, a doctor, the general practitioner always makes the least. The heart surgeon, the brain surgeon, the people that specialize make more money. The people that specialize make more money. So until you define a niche and you become the solution to a sector of customers, then you will always compete on price. Because if I don't really have a niche, something that separates me from somebody else, the only thing that separates me is my price, right? So if I'm just like every job shop down the road, I got a 3/4 shop, I got three axis, 4-axis, some lathes, mills, whatever, and I'm just competing. That's all I'm competing on is price. There's no differentiation. And so if you're going to not allow price to drive everything, we have to have a differentiator. We have to have a niche. Pick an industry, something you do super, super well. And it can be anything. It can be the processes you create. It can be the types of materials you're good at. It can be the tolerances you're able to hold. It can be it can even be efficiency. You may be able to be the kind of fire order shop, meaning we can turn around parts extremely fast. And people will pay a premium for that. So maybe you're the fire shop, man. Like, you come here when you need a part in the same week or whatever, on low runs, especially, obviously. And so maybe that's you. It doesn't matter, but we've got to niche down somewhere. A shop without a niche is left to argue on price. Write that down, ladies and gentlemen. A shop without a niche is left to argue on price. I'm going to say it a third time. A shop without a niche is left to argue on price. And I want to help you not argue on price, especially if you want to grow. And I'll give you an example of this. When I first bought Quick Tech Machining, which was my first acquisition, and I've since bought 8 more. The first shop I ever purchased, Quick Tech Machining, which you see my shirt on here. Quick Tech Machining it is as 3/4 as it gets. It's just that straight lathes, mills. It's just nothing sexy. But we do some very stainless, tight tolerance. We do some good stuff. Bushings, especially, we're really, really, really good at. Okay, so we tried to niche down a little bit there. But one of the things I found is one of the parts we were doing, the previous owner had quoted this type of part. It was a part for the automotive industry, which, if you know anything about the automotive industry, you know that it's a race to the bottom anyway. Often, not always, but often. So we were doing this part, and when I hired Kirk Phelps, which is why you should listen to the Op Show, he came in and he's evaluating. And he said, "Mike, I think we're losing money on these parts." I'm like, "What do you mean, man? We make good. I mean, we make a lot of them. They seem to make them pretty quick. I think we're doing fine." And so we kind of stuck a stopwatch to it. This was pre-ERP days. We didn't have an ERP at this time, and we found out every time we made a part, we lost about $1. And we'd make them $500 at a time. So we'd lose $500 on every order. but it made us feel like we were moving and then realized, man, why is there no money in the bank account? You've all been there. I know you have, because if you run a machine shop, you've been there. And so the truth is, it's like, why are we losing? Because we competed on price. I found out previously the owner lowered his price in order to win the work. And he had a stipulation. This part works as long as the operator is running two machines at once. That could not be a worse way to quote, just in case you were wondering, but we were losing our rear end on that part. Get this though. So we say, all right, they sent us a PO one day. They're like, okay, let's do this. They sent us a PO. And so we're about to do the part. And Kirk says, let's send this back and update the price to where we can make money. So he increased the price almost 100%. It was like 80%. It was almost doubled the price. It was nuts. And we're like, dude, we're not going to get it at this. They sent us a PO in minutes. I hope you heard that. Minutes. We got a PO back the same, and within an hour, we had the PO back for 80% increase in price. And here's what we found out. It's because people can't do it that cheap. And we were always on time, and our quality is impeccable. Guess what? Price isn't the only driver. And now we make those parts and we actually make money. Go figure, right? If you focus and use price as your differentiator, you'll always be tight on cash. And you got to do a lot of parts in that model. And I'm telling you, it's the Walmart machine shop, right? Rollback prices, we're the lowest in town. I'm telling you, don't be. Choose an industry that allows you to grow your price. And when you make parts, make good money. Look at our episode where we interviewed Dan Etcherenkamp on the aerospace industry. It's a good industry for strong margins. If you're in the OEM industry or the automotive industry or the weapons industry and you're machining that kind of stuff, it's pretty tough. Those margins are tight. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't build a process around that to make it more efficient. Because sometimes we'll be like, you know what, this is a good part for us. The price isn't great, but what if we could create a process that makes the price better for us? So here's an example. I'm not using price as the differentiator. I'm seeing what price they need and saying, okay, if I did it at that price, what would I have to do inside my shop to make me money? I don't care how everybody else is doing it. So I'm still not using price as my differentiator. In that case, I'm using partnership as my differentiator. Say, okay, you're a good customer or you're a possible new customer. I want to partner with you here. So let me see what you need and I'll see what I can do inside my shop to make it for you. But I'm not just going to lower my price and say, okay, I'll take the hit so you don't have to. You can't do that. Any job that's not a win-win is not a win for anybody. Because even if the OEM wins and gets, or whoever's happening you make parts, they're getting them for great prices, but it's killing your shop sooner or later. They ain't going to have you to go to, right? And so I want you to stop competing on price. And the reason I want you to stop competing on price is because you can't really control your bottom line very well if you're competing on price. Nothing, hear me when I underline this, please underline this. Not much or nothing really stresses the bottom line other than a bad top line price. You hear that? Of course, bad systems for sure. But if your margin's at 5-6%, man, how much error do you have on the shop? Not much, man. You can't hardly scrap a few parts without losing money. And that's just not the world we live in. We don't live in a world of perfection. We live in a world of precision, but not perfection. And meaning there's shop mishaps, there's machines that go down, there's parts that don't come out right that we got to tweak, blah, 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 blah. And so we've got to make sure that price isn't our only differentiator. So the first thing is, I want you to, and you've heard me say this 100 times on our show, what does your shop do differently than any other shop in the world? What's the differentiator? What differentiates you from your competitor? Is it your partnership process? Is it your quality process? Is it your quality numbers? You know what, QuickTech, I've owned QuickTech 3 years. We had one part since I've been there come back on quality, and it was only because our third-party processor jacked it up and it went straight to the customer, and that was still our fault. But the thing that I'm saying is we're really good, like 99+% on quality. That's a pretty dang good selling point, right? You can sell on that. But I want to also tell you, be very careful making quality your only differentiator, because quality should be assumed. We don't brag because we do our jobs, right? Quality is an assumption. Delivery is an assumption. Now, if you're an expediter, there's a differentiator. You can find a way to expedite parts quickly. right? That's a process issue. That's a process play, and you could do that, right? If you can program quickly, get material quickly, get it on the machines, that's powerful. But a lot of people move price up and down out of fear. It's fear of idle machines, fear of low bank account, fear of not being able to make payroll, fear of not having work, inconsistent pipelines, inconsistent backlogs, right? So we kind of turn into this desperate quoting machine of, I just got to get work in here. I don't care if I make any money right now. I just got to get work in here. Oh, that's why shops go out of business. Please don't do that. But again, if price is your only advantage, you don't have a business, you have a race to the bottom. You don't have a business, you have a race to the bottom, or you have a bad business, right? So when you compete on price, your margins are obviously lower. You don't have as much money for CapEx or capital expenditures, if you've never heard that term. CapEx is where you put more money into machines and people and growth and maybe putting some lean into your shop or adding some new softwares and new ERPs. You don't have money to do that because your margin is so tight. You have to have extreme amounts of volume to have CapEx money. So you have lower margins, so there's no reinvestment. You have to do more volume, which creates more chaos. If you have the systems for it, you can handle that. But if we're going to grow, this is what our podcast is about, getting you to the next level. Rarely have I heard anybody say this: I really started growing my shop when I lowered my prices. Rarely. In fact, I have never heard it. And I'm saying rarely to make sure that I'm not being too dogmatic, but I've never heard it. And my guess is you haven't either. I really grew my shop. We doubled in value when I lowered my prices. That's not how it works, right? And if you have customers that are pushing you down to the bottom, they're not great customers for you. I'm not saying fire them today because you need them to keep the lights on, but I'm saying you have to simultaneously build customers that fit you and see the value you bring attached to your differentiation. You need to find customers that are looking specifically for your differentiator. We're really good at gear. We're really good at tight tolerance shafts, or we're really good at whatever. Find what they need, be great at that thing, find customers that need that thing, and stop saying, I can do that. I just, lower my price. I get it. And we've done it too. We're all susceptible to doing this, to lowering the price to get the part to keep the lights on. We all are. And so I'm going to speak real and not like, this is just a pie in the sky idea. That happens sometimes. And there's a day to do that where it's like, okay, I'm not going to make any money, but I'm going to keep my people working. I get it. I really do. And I feel that has happened to me before, and it's not a great feeling. So I want us to understand, though, that is temporary. But if you temporarily think like that forever, you'll always be a shop that's temporarily thinking like that, right? So you'll never get out of that. It's like a hamster wheel you get stuck on, but the glass walls have closed tight to the wheel. So you're stuck. You can't get out right or left. You just have to stay on the wheel. And we don't want that. We want to get you off the wheel. The way we get you off the wheel is with a solid differentiator, and then find customers in which that differentiation is important to their buying process or their selection process for their vendors, right? So again, it can create team burnout. If you're running your teams ragged and you're having to do crazy amounts of parts, we took on a job a couple months ago. This is an example of we took a job, shouldn't have. It was not a job that fit our shop. And then we got to the point where we finally are like, let's find another shop. So we outsourced the job, didn't make any money on it, just basically gave the job to somebody else that could do it. But again, our people were scared to death. We were actually going to put those parts in there because they didn't know how to do them. They would take a lot of training to get them done, all that good stuff. But here's the point. We still make these exact mistakes of accepting work that doesn't belong on our floor. Why? We got to keep the lights on, got to run the jobs, got to pay payroll. I'm with you. I get it. So just understand the difference between a shop that's growing and a shop that's stagnant often is they're not charging enough money. Imagine if you're doing, I don't know, a couple $1,000,000 a year, $1,000,000 a year, whatever, you're a smaller shop in that $1 to 2 million range. And you might be crazy, 5, 10, 15, 20 million, doesn't matter. But imagine you're in that million range, $1 to 2 million. And all you said was, you know what? inflation's hit, our guys need raises, our girls need raises, our people need to get more money. We have to raise our prices. So each quote we're going to bump by 10%. We have to. $1,000 is now going to be 1,100. It's got to, just with inflation. You just increase. Here's the thing. That's not top line. That's bottom line. Hear me? Because here's the deal. If you're already getting the job done for $1,000, and I mean, at the time you raise the price, yesterday you were doing it for 1,000. Today you're doing it for 1,100. That $100, there's no more expense in that part process. That's a bottom line appreciation to your value. So 10%, you can increase your bottom line by 10% immediately. And by just lifting your prices a little bit. Now, if you're tapped out in the market, I get it. If you just went through a price increase and you're pretty solid, great. Don't do that. But it's interesting because a lot of times people will ask, well, what's your shop rate? And what we have found is, number one, people don't actually know how to figure that out, because the shop rate is not just, well, the market's 85 an hour. It's like, well, or it's 120 an hour. It doesn't really matter. It matters what it needs to be for you. Meaning, what's your burden? What's your hourly wages? Meaning your burden with all hard costs, building, lease, buy, utility, however you own the real estate, all your utilities, all your insurance, everything, every employee dollar, all the cogs, everything that or not the cogs, but the everything else. That's your burden rate. A lot of people don't even know what their burden rate is per person per hour. Meaning every hour somebody works on that, what's your burden rate across people per hour? And then you can figure out what your shop rate needs to be. But most people don't even know how to figure that out. And then when they do say, well, my shop rate's X, we find out they adjust that up and down for their customer. It's like, your stated rate's 125, but I'm seeing you quote stuff at 92 all the time, right? That's really, really unhealthy for a company, because it stresses you every time you accept a $92 job, or whatever your job rate is or shop rate is. Whatever when you accept that, it puts more stress on your people and systems in order to create profit, or it wipes your profit out altogether. And that's incredibly important. So a lot of times, burden, cogs, margin, right? All of that needs to be in there, but a lot of times people aren't putting that process together really, really well. And one thing, and this is why, again, I'll push you to our ops show. One of the important things about doing your job well, making sure your programs are ran very well so that they're making parts as fast as possible inside the machine, is, whatever your price is, the more efficiently you make that part, the more it goes to your bottom line, right? So you got to be very, very intentional about when you take on work, making sure that work's being done in the most efficient way possible, making sure you have as least people touch that part as possible, but as many people as you need to hit quality, and all of those things. But it's really important you don't just make a part and just keep doing it the same old way. Do you challenge your process? Imagine this. Imagine if you could keep your price the same, keep that work, but change your process so you actually make money at it. A lot of people can't. We make certain parts at Quick Tech Machining. A lot of people couldn't make as cheap as we make them. But why can we make them as cheap as we can? We've honed our process so well. We make incredible 30-40% margin on parts that with our process, because it's so good, that most shops would be in the 9, 10, 11 range. And that's how good our process is, because we've been doing those parts and we know those parts really well. Yet again, a real reason for differentiation, right? Again, cheap work. I want you to understand this. And this is hard when you're trying to quote, get jobs and all that stuff. Cheap work is often the most expensive work you'll ever take, because cheap work usually comes from a little bit more difficult customers, a little bit more difficult processes. Cheap work is not where you want to be. They're not where you want to be. I can tell you this, man. Our customers, the ones that we work for, they pay for reliability. They pay for speed. They pay for communication. Reliability also meaning quality. They pay for confidence. They know when they have a shelf get low, they can call us up and say, "Hey, Mike, I know I just sent you the PO yesterday. I am in a bind here. How fast can you get this to me?" And they have a confidence that I will rip a machine apart if I have to. I don't want to, but I will if I have to make that work. But they have confidence in that. Now, again, that's not always the case, and rarely do we have to do that because rarely I can often say, okay, well, I got this finishing in 2 days, and instead of putting that next part on it, I'll put this part on it for you, and I'll run you to the end, right? And so they buy confidence. They buy risk reduction. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of bigger OEMs and bigger customers want to run a risk assessment on your shop before they give you a bunch of work. What's the risk of you just going out of business? What's the risk of you just going under? What's the risk of you just saying, we just can't do these parts anymore and leaving them in a bind where their customers are getting ticked? They do a risk reduction, right? And good customers, I'll say great customers, they rarely buy on the lowest price alone. They buy on the least risk. Yes, price is risky. So if they pay more, that adds to the risk. So it is an art. This is where this art of price comes in versus just the science of, $25 for this part or $150 for this part or whatever the price is, where that range comes in. But a lot of times customers are looking at the risk. Price is part of the risk profile, but not the whole thing. And so again, your differentiation, your reliability, your communication, your partnership, your knowledge, your expertise gives you an edge. And stop thinking you have to be the cheap person in town to be invited to the dance, because you don't. That just ain't the case. Okay. So stop competing on price. Stop competing on price. The first thing you're going to do today is you're going to find your differentiation. You're going to find your differentiation. You're going to go to town. You're going to say, okay, I'm not going to differentiate on price anymore. I'm going to start looking for customers. First of all, I'm going to choose that differentiation. Then I'm going to start looking for customers where that differentiation is important. Now, if the differentiation is a type of part or type of material, those customers are easier to find because you can find out who makes parts that align with that differentiation, right? Well, that's not the only way, but that's one way to do it. We got to start picking better customers, and we got to define what we are great at. And then we got to place a quoting process through powerful discipline. We discipline that we know our burden rate, meaning all the cost that goes into running this company versus all the cost goes into running this part. And I don't mean just the machine. I'm saying like the running the part is, the labor standing at it, the materials, the tooling, all that good stuff. But then just what's it cost to run the business? That's not necessarily part specific, right? You've got to know that comes in disciplined quoting. Quoting is in a disciplined way that really, really differentiates, or rather than differentiates, a quoting process that protects. That's what I'm trying to say. It protects you from getting a part in your shop that really hands your ass to you because you just went too low on where that part should really be. So you got to define what you're great at and then become really disciplined in your quoting process. And with new customers especially, you have to practice communicating that value. What are you in your differentiation? We call it a USP in marketing, unique selling proposition. I know in the machining industry, sales and marketers are often seen like these kind of dirty people. But truthfully, we got to think about how we communicate the value we bring to customers. What can we do that can help them? Because you got to remember, unless it's a proto part, meaning a prototype, most parts are already being made by somebody. So if you think about to get work, they're pulling work from somebody to give it to you. Not always. Sometimes they need more and they need a different shop to do it because they've already tapped shop one out with the work they're doing and they need shop two to back them up for overflow or whatever. So sometimes that's the case. So for them to move, what usually agitates customers? Quality, time, communication, confidence, all the things we talked about that hit that risk assessment, right? And that risk profile that they're looking for, right? So you want to work on communicating your value. What do you do differently? How can you help customers? The reason we talk about American Precision Partner is we really put the part in partnership. That's our motto. That's what we say here is like, hey, if you want a machine shop, there's a million of them. There's tons. But you want somebody that's going to come in and help you make sure the part's being made the right way, make sure that we can't save you some money by making it differently or out of a different material or in a different way. Like, let us come in and see your process so we can actually help make you money and save you money. That's a different feel. We're not just order takers sitting behind a computer that never meet our customers, right? And here's the big one. You got to be willing to lose bad work. You got to be willing to say no, I can't do it for that. I'm sorry. If you're able to do it for this, I can do it. I can make that part, but I can't do it for that, right? I can't make that. You gotta be willing to lose bad work because often taking on bad work blocks space for good work. Hear me again. Taking on bad work blocks space for good work. We're so scared of quiet spindles that we'll fill it with bad work. And so there's no space for new work and good work. So we have to be willing to lose bad work because you cannot win better work or the right work or real profitable work if you're afraid to lose the bad stuff, right? Because the hard truth, if you're losing on price, it's not the market. I mean, it's not like, wow, they're just going to if you're losing on price all the time, it's your positioning and who you're going after. It's who's turning you down, not that they're turning you down. And this is again assuming you are good with quality, good with on-time delivery, and they know you. I mean, if I have a customer that really knows us, knows what we can do, knows our value, and I lose to a shop across town, a person that's got a garage with a lathe and mill in it, and they're beating us on price, I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to compete with that. I have more burden, I have more people, but we also can take more of your work, and we're really seasoned at this. So, we are less risky than that shop, but we're probably not going to be less expensive. And that's okay. That's okay because I'm keeping my spindles open for profitable work. And believe me, to make sure that you don't think I'm at the end of the tunnel waiting for y'all to catch up, I have taken bad work before a couple times. This year even took a bad job we shouldn't have taken. So it's not something that just shut off. Yeah, it's a weaning process, a weaning out the bad work because then it leaves a more balanced shop, a more stable shop, a calm shop that's not chaotic and just trying to get parts out the door because these things I've only got a penny margin on these puppies. Yeah, right. That's not what we do. Price is not your differentiator. And it's often not the ultimate decision maker. Sometimes it is. And for most customers in which price is the ultimate decision maker, you're risking probably losing that stuff to overseas or somebody with a lathe and a mill in a garage that you couldn't compete with. They're just making parts at their own pace, and they have no overhead, and they're just waiting for whatever, right? They're just making parts, and it's cheap. They'll take it for anything because they don't have people to pay or whatever. It's just them. That's a tough one to beat, and so the truth of the matter is, you don't want to compete on price, right? So as you step back and say, what should you compete on? What is your differentiator? So shops, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna challenge you, and I've challenged you before. One of the shows we did a couple weeks ago, or I did a couple weeks ago, was finding out your ICP, your ideal customer profile, right? Well, that comes from defining your major differentiation, so you can stop competing on price. When you find the right customers, price price isn't as important. When somebody needs a heart transplant, you think they're price shopping the doctors in town like, well, Johnny will throw a heart in here for 20% less. No, they're going to the people that can do it well and keep it ticking, right? The person with a reputation that shows up, that does it well, that it's good. They're not price shopping heart surgery, right? And what we want you to do is be a differentiator so they ain't price shopping your process. They can find a cheaper price, but they can't find a better team, right? That is a motto to hang in your shop floor. Hear me. They can find a cheaper price, but they can't find a better team or better shop, right? That's what you have to believe about your shop. That's what we believe about our shop. You can find somebody cheaper, but you ain't going to find somebody with the customer service we bring. I call it the Dunder Mifflin effect. If you know the show The Office back in the early 2000s, one of my favorite shows of all time, they always, how does a paper company compete with Staples and the big paper? They always sold service. They sold the ability to give customer service. It's not about a sheet of paper. It's about how we service the person that uses that sheet of paper. Same thing. Not about a part. And they can have the part made that way by a lot of shops. A lot of times it comes down to how well you serve them, communicate with them, partner with them, are willing to get them out of a bind if they need it. etc. I really care that we get a hold of this and stop trying to compete on price. I appreciate you all. That is all the time we have for today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share this with everybody you know. We don't want anybody competing on price anymore. So we appreciate you again. Thanks for tuning in to the Machine Shop Growth Podcast, and we will see you in the next episode. So again, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, please, please, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Those positive reviews really do fuel us forward, and we'd love a review from you so that we could go and continue to impact people in this amazing industry of machining. So we are so grateful. And again, we are doubling our content this year. No more 2 episodes a month. We're going to 4 episodes a month, and a couple of them will be sales, marketing, growth. The other 2 will be ops, engineering, and the floor. It'll really be the floor, like what happens on the floor, right? We're so grateful for all of you. So make sure that you tune in next week for another episode of Machine Shop Growth Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great week.